Welcome to my talk. Can you guys in the back hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, cool. So this is using .NET libraries in CPython. First thing I want to say to you guys, go ahead and download the handouts. So I uploaded them earlier today. And the handouts have not only the text from the slides, but also the notes for each slide, as well as all the pretty pictures and the source code for the demos. And this is really presumptuous of me, but let's just assume you're blown away by this .NET stuff and you just can't get enough, and you're wondering, it's like, oh man, where can I get my fix of .NET and Python? So we have an open space session scheduled for tomorrow evening after some of the other .NET related talks. It's going to be in Love International B from 7 to 8:30. So, come one, come all. So let's get right into it. First of all, what is Python.NET? It's not too complicated. It's basically just an extension module for CPython. And its primary goal is to just let you use the .NET libraries inside of Python. And when I say .NET, I actually also mean Mono, which is the open source version of .NET. One of the things that's a little odd about .NET is it's an extension module, but it's implemented in C#, not in C and C++. And just so you know what's going on with the version situation is the latest version, which is 2.0. It's in alpha right now. It actually works with Python 2.5 and .NET 2.0 and above. And I think that no discussion of Python.NET is quite complete unless we also talk about IronPython, because there's a lot of stuff that the two projects have in common, just because they both deal with .NET, right? But IronPython is quite a different beast. It's actually a complete Python interpreter implemented in C#, whereas Python.NET is just a module. And it's developed currently at Microsoft. And one thing that Guido mentioned in his keynote is that IronPython is not the same as CPython, right? It does not have stack frames, for instance. It does not have the GIL, the global interpreter lock, and some other stuff. Oh yeah, and strings are all Unicode. Question? Yes. Question is. Okay. The gentleman's question was, he's not clear on what CPython, what I mean when I say that. So CPython, yeah, is the default implementation of Python. That's the version of Python that if you go to python.org, that's what you get. It's the one that's implemented in C. Whereas Jython is implemented in Java, and IronPython is implemented in C#, which is, the primary language of .NET. So let's just get right into the source code. And I hope that Mark Pilgrim doesn't sue me for the slide. Is that big enough? Do I need to make it a little bit bigger for people in the back?
A little bigger might be good.
We'll just say this is okay. First of all, you'll notice that the very first thing you need to do is import CLR. That's the actual name of the module that makes all the magic happen. Then from there on, you can basically just import from the .NET namespaces the same way that you normally import from Python modules. You'll notice that there's the third line is a little weird, right? What does this CRL.addReference mean? It just means that we're gonna import this or load this DLL into memory so that we can use it. Basically, we can use namespaces inside of it. So somewhere on your computer, there should be a file called system.windows.forms.dll, and this line here loads that file. And then you have some object creations, really not all that interesting. The only thing I want to draw attention to is here. What is happening here is, first of all, we imported the array object from system. And what that is in .NET, you have arrays which are fixed size collections whose elements are all the same type. So definitely different from Python lists, for instance. So they're not completely compatible, but you have to deal with them because .NET uses them. So what we do in that line here is we'll create that array, and then we initialize it with elements using just elements from a normal Python array, or sorry, a Python list, which we just use a list comprehension up here to create. Okay? And and that's the GUI program that results from that. So I've talked about what Python.NET does, what it can do, but you still might be wondering why do I want to use it, right? Like, what is it about .NET that is gonna make you want to use it, rather than just using the Python libraries that you can already use right from the get-go. So this is my cue to launch into my little series of demos. All right, first of all, I'm going to talk about Windows Forms. This is like for me, this is like the king of the quick and dirty GUI. Like, it is really simple, and you have a ton of like little widgets that you can use, and it's so easy for me that I'd rather like just make a quick Windows Forms GUI rather than even do like a command line interface. So that little chunk of code, what that generates is, this little program here. And it's not like super awesome, but I didn't really spend a lot of time on it. So after that, there's Windows Presentation Foundation, or WPF for short. So this is basically the successor to WinForms, and the only reason I haven't switched totally over to that is because it's part of .NET 3.0. Not everyone has that. If you didn't specifically download it from Microsoft, you probably don't have it yet, unless you're running Windows Vista. So the code for this is not so great, but you'll see why. It's kind of a meta example. It incorporates multiple examples. Oh, shoot. Get a little buzzing. I gotta dish myself on. That didn't help. Hello? It's happening. Okay. Just bear with it. Okay, so this is just miscellaneous controls. You can see on the side, it's all just XML. Like, this whole layout was done in XML. It's super short, it's really easy, and it doesn't look like crap. You can also do arbitrary, well, not arbitrary, but a bunch of bitmap effects. They're pretty interesting, but mostly they're just really easy. You also have the canvas. You can draw little shapes on it. You can make gradients. You can put a little glow there. There's a nice little frame control, and the name is kind of misleading. What it does is it allows you to embed a web browser inside your GUI, which doesn't do anything because my networking is not working. Yeah, but it's basically embedding IE. Here's where it's kind of interesting, the speech synthesis. Let's see if I can get this thing to talk through the mic. So, probably most people have Microsoft SAM, they might not have some of the other guys. I don't know if anyone heard that. But you can make it a little slower if you wanted to. One thing that's kind of neat is you can actually, it actually has a simplified Chinese voice, which is just, it kind of blows me away. Like, why is it even here? I mean, I appreciate it, but maybe not everyone else does. But it actually works. Oh, well, forget that. Sometimes those kind of things happen in a demo. So speech synthesis. Here we have speech recognition. This one might be really dicey. We'll see how it goes. Just turn up the volume all the way. Okay. Well, I'm gonna try to speak to my computer and let it do something. Play. Wonder what happened. I swear, this kind of stuff just. Oh, you know what? I bet that's what happened. Couldn't find the file. That's what happened. Recognition. Try this again. so it's because it's intelligent and it just it wants to play Journey forever. Obviously, digital ink. This is basically like handwriting recognition, but it actually incorporates a lot of other stuff, which is why it has kind of a vague name. Fortunately, I have a tablet PC, so I can sort of demo it. It's surprisingly good because like you can like have really crappy handwriting and it will still recognize it. Like even if I put cursive, it still is okay with it. And part of how it does it is it looks at the words it can recognize and kind of extrapolates a little bit, like words that like letters that aren't so clear. So I was going to write that, but it takes too long. One of the cool things about .NET is you got the Microsoft Robotics Studio. So among the ones that it's compatible with is Lego Mindstorms. Also the iRobot Create. So that's from the same company that brought you the Roomba. And here we got two robots. On the left we have the Pioneer P3DX. And on the right we have the Kondo KHR1 quote-unquote fighting robot. So as an aside, like when the robots become self-aware and decide to rebel, I'm hoping that they don't look like the fighting robot, because that guy is he looks like he's ready to throw down at any time. Like if anything, I'd rather like the robots that rebel look like this guy, because I could take this guy, but that guy I don't know. Yeah, so. But you can get a head start by programming, learning how to program them, so when they attack you, you know what to do. There's a bunch of hardware SDKs, so I think everyone's familiar with the Wiimote from Nintendo. On the top here, we have the fidget interface kit, so it has a bunch of analog inputs and digital outputs. Here we have a vibration sensor, so you plug this into the analog port, and then you get readings to your computer. So obviously this little thing is a USB thing. So obviously they have a .NET SDK. Bluetooth, communicating phones, cell phones, whatever. I mean, all these small devices using Bluetooth now. There's also Z-Wave. I didn't put this on here, but also X10. So Z-Wave and X10 are basically communication protocols for home automation. And hold on. So this is my highly technical term, enterprisey stuff, for stuff that gets labeled as like enterprise sort of stuff. You got SQuery, you have SQL Server. So those are things that there are no really good stable Python implementations for, right? And then of course you have this whole stable of ports of Java libraries. I know that, well, you could just use them in Java because they're originally written in Java, but like .NET integration is so good with Python that you might actually consider going through .NET instead. And any Java libraries that have not been purposefully ported, you can probably use through IKVM, which is a Java VM that is implemented in .NET. Yes. Yeah, so the gentleman there mentioned that you can also use JPython if you want to integrate with Java, and he's totally right. And I didn't really mean to exclude that, except it's outside the scope of my talk. But I have used JPython, and the integrations are not quite as good, in my opinion. But it's still like a really useful library. So that's kind of the end of the happy part of the presentation. Now we get into the nitty-gritty. Okay, so this is just a bunch of terminology. I'm not going to get into it too much, but you need to know like the .NET world it's like its own programming environment, its own like culture and everything. It has its own words for everything. So it does help. This is just a taste of some of the words that you need to know if you're going to do any serious reading on .NET. The thing that I'm going to concentrate a little bit more in the following slides is the global assembly cache, or the GAC. So this thing is like the Python's lib directory, like where all the standard library stuff and third-party libraries get installed. It's a global repository of libraries. Okay, so let's see. This is basically what I talked about already in that slide on dive into Python.NET. But now I've added the concept of a strong name. And let me give you an example of what a strong name is. So in the previous example that I showed with the code, you notice I added reference from a system DLL. So anything that starts with system is something that you don't need a strong name for. It's part of the core.NET framework. But here we have a library called IA-Core, and it doesn't start with system, so you have to use a strong name, at least for Python.NET you do. The strong name includes the name of the DLL, the version, the culture, and something called the public key token. And you may be wondering, how do I get that strong name? So the way you do it is you just go to the GAC. And the GAC, you probably cannot see that up there, but basically it's in a folder called C/Windows/assembly. So yeah, this is what it looks like. It's actually a special directory, so it has it renders a little bit differently from most directories. So yeah, just type A, there it is. So IA-Core is here, and then here you can see the version, here you can see the public key token. If you hover your mouse over it, you'll see the actual strong name that you're supposed to use to add reference to it. But you can just right-click on it, click on properties, and then, because I always just copy and paste the public key token, I don't actually look at it and try to type it out. I usually make a mistake. So that's the screenshot. It might be a little easier to see what's going on. And this is the property dialog. And I just want to do a little overview of, what do you if you have a situation where you want your .NET code to invoke a Python function. Okay, maybe you don't end up doing this all that much, but definitely Python.NET makes this really easy for you. So what you do is you go through something called a delegate, or you can use something called an event. And basically a delegate is just like a .NET version of a function pointer. And basically you take that delegate and you wrap the Python function around it and then you send it to .NET. And it's like half a line. It's not really worth mentioning because it's in the Python.NET, all the documentation. Another thing you have is events. Events are actually a little bit easier to use. Basically, you can think of them as a collection of delegates. Like you have an event and you have a bunch of callbacks that you can attach to it. And actually, it's really simple. You just use the plus equal operator in Python. And if someone needs to see an example, you can come to open space, or I can just show it to you at the end. And your third option is to just embed the CPython interpreter inside your .NET application. And I don't really recommend this though, because I think once you seriously considering doing something like that, I think you've gone into the realm of something that probably IronPython would be better at. And there is like this program that comes with .NET, the .NET 2.0 SDK. It's actually a documentation program, and is really helpful for learning about .NET stuff, and just like especially when you're starting out, you're wondering like, what is, how do I use all this stuff? Hold on. I'm going to do like a really brief demo because this program is not quite the same as other documentation tools that you might have seen. It's going to be a little small, but I'm not going to do anything really major. So on the left-hand side, you have index, and you have another tab called contents. Index is what you mostly do a search on. One of the things about .NET is it is a massive framework, so there are a lot of name clashes. So for example, if I search for button, I actually end up with two choices. The first one is not necessarily the one that I want. So down here in this area here, it gives you the two choices of which button class it is. So the one that I'm being shown is the one in system.web.ui.web controls. And the one that I actually wanted was system.windows.forms. So just so you know that, that you use this little panel here to resolve the ambiguity, okay? And also, you don't have to search by class. You can search by the method. So you can say, or property, whatever. You can say button, button.click, or something. So that's the click event of button. So you can drill down a little bit. If you know the full name of a class, you can just look it up. So you can say system.windows.forms. .button. I spelled something wrong, but you get the idea. So if you know exactly where the thing is in the namespace, you can look it up directly. And there's kind of a weird thing about this documentation. Let me expand this. By default, it gives you like the method signature for every single language. Like not every single language in .NET, but like most of the main ones, right? And I don't know about you, but looking at like VB signatures makes my eyes bleed. Like first of all, they're just noise because I don't care about it. And also, it's just I don't like it basically. So they have this language filter feature at the top, so you can deselect the VB stuff, deselect C++, J#, JScript. So I'm most familiar with C#. It's very similar to Java, and so I usually just stick with that. One last thing is under contents. There's a little thing called the Quick Technology Finder. And what that is it's sort of like an index, but it's arranged by categories or like domains of applications. So you have ADO.NET, that's for data, ASP, that's for web programming, asynchronous programming, data access. So like this is a good way, like if you have some idea of like what you want to do, but you don't know the actual names of the namespaces or objects, look at the Quick Technology Finder. That's what it's for. And it's really like, it's almost a little bit like a guided tour of .NET. So that's the SDK documentation thing. And you have to download the SDK. It does not come with the redistributable. This is something I want to mention because I was running into this error like all the time in Python.NET. So basically the error always involves something related to single threaded department or STA. And the details are not really that interesting. Basically it has something to do with COM and threading. If you see something like this, and the actual details in the handout, basically you need to import from the Python COM module, which comes in the Py132 extension module. Import that and just call python.coinitialize. So that's in the handout. But if you don't see that error, don't do it. Just be safe. You might accidentally screw something else up. And this is just a list of differences, like subtle kind of differences between Python.NET and IronPython when you're talking about integrating with .NET. And I include this just so like if you are looking on the internet and you're seeing like an example in IronPython and you're wondering, hey, can I run this in Python.NET? Chances are you can, but you might need to make a few code adjustments based on sort of these little points here. And here we have a list of resources. So this is just like a bunch of websites that, if you want to find out more information. Obviously Python.NET, IronPython homepage. The thing about the IronPython homepage is actually if you go to the download section, you can find a download that has a bunch of samples. And a lot of those do work in Python.NET. Same with the IronPython cookbook. So I've actually put a few recipes on there. Some of those recipes are explicitly work with both Python.NET and IronPython, but some of them need a little bit of tweaking. But there's a lot of like interesting recipes there. Code project, this is for kind of a general .NET resource. Like if you're wondering about like a particular .NET technology, I would check here first. It's actually usually better to check this place even than Wikipedia for a lot of .NET topics. And then Coding for Fun, this is sort of like a hobbyist programming blog, which you can look for like ideas of like how to do some hardware hacks or certain other software hacks, web programming that it might just give you some ideas. A lot of them you can probably like convert them to Python, even though most of them are not written for Python. And I think, let's see, that's my last slide. So I open the floor up to questions. Yes.
What do you find most useful or unique about this combination?
Okay, so the question was, what do I find most useful or unique about the combination? So I think that if I owned like a fighting robot, that would probably be it, but that would break my wallet. But because I don't, it's probably the user interface stuff that I demoed. Because one thing that wasn't clear, because I didn't go through the source code, is that it's all part of one framework. And there's no other framework that integrates all these different paradigms of user interface programming. And there's nothing else that puts everything together like that. And this is like, I think it's like the future of GUIs, really, like voice, controlling things with voice, controlling things with your pen, with your mind. Except the mind part's not implemented yet, but it's coming, right? Okay. Does that answer? Okay. Anybody else? Yes.
Can you only load references to strong name assemblies from the GAC?
The question is, can you only load strong named assemblies from the GAC? The answer is, it's not a restriction. Most of the time, if it's a very specialized library, or if it's something that's custom, that you made yourself, you don't want to put it in the GAC, probably. So what you do is you make sure that DLL file is on your sys.path. And then you just do CLL, that add reference, and then don't use the strong name. As long as it's in sys.path, you don't need the strong name. But almost all the programming I do is, because I don't do that much C# programming, so I don't have a lot of my own assemblies. But your case may vary. Anybody else? Oh, in back.
Do you use the meta path to enable the importing of the .NET libraries, or are you doing something different?
What do you mean by meta
The
path?
sys meta path focus.
Oh, sys.path? I usually don't, because, but like the person over there just asked, if it's your own library, your custom library that's not in the GAC, then yeah, you do need sys.path. Just make sure that.
Not the add reference part, but the actual import part.
So add reference enables you to import. So unless it's like a core .NET thing that's in the system namespace, like not system.windows.forms, but just plain old system without any dot behind it, you don't need to add any references to system. But anything that's outside of system, like system.windows.forms, you need to add a reference to. And if it's something that's not in the GAC, you may need to make sure it's in sys.path.
Let me try to question your way.
Okay.
You're not getting the answer, but maybe that was good for other folks. The question is, from an implementation point of view, how are you using the Python import book or the meta app, all that, in order to, you're modifying Python's import to make import system work. And Python has several mechanisms of looking into the import mechanism. I think we were just wondering which of Python's ways to modify the import mechanism.
Actually, I didn't follow everything you said. Yeah.
Let's see a lot more, like people say a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, CLL is all C# based. Yeah. There's not another mic floating around. Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay, I think that's it then.